The first time I heard it, I thought it was the wind. A low, steady hum threading through the pines, a sound that didn't belong but was soft enough to ignore. I'd driven 5 hours north past the last gas station, past the ranger station that looked half abandoned, to a place on the map called Stillwater Ridge. The name promised quiet, and that was all I wanted. After months of city clatter and screens, I was starving for silence, the kind that lets you hear your own heartbeat and the wings of moths against canvas. But that hum, it followed me. I set up camp by a small lake that mirrored the sky like polished steel. The air smelled of spruce and damp earth. I could hear loons far off and the slow drip of water from my paddle as I beached the canoe. Everything was right, except for that faint vibration in the air, like a distant motor that never wound down. That night, lying in my tent, it became impossible to ignore. The sound rose and fell in waves, sometimes mechanical, sometimes almost organic. Not loud, but constant. I unzipped the tent and stepped into the dark, the cool air hitting my face like a curtain. The stars were bright, but the forest seemed to hum beneath them. I tried to pinpoint the direction. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't insects, it wasn't the whisper of the trees rubbing against one another. It was deeper, rhythmic, and unsettlingly deliberate. I told myself it might be logging equipment somewhere miles away, maybe a generator at a backwoods cabin, but each time I thought I'd located its source, it shifted, as though the forest itself was carrying it from tree to tree. I fell asleep to that sound and dreamed of gears turning beneath the soil, huge and slow. By morning, I was determined to find it. I packed a day's worth of food and followed the noise. It pulsed faintly, leading me along a ridge lined with cedar and stone. I walked for hours, sometimes losing it entirely, only for it to return, slightly louder, slightly nearer. The forest felt different when I hunted the sound. The air thicker, the light sharper. Even the birds seemed hesitant to call. At midday, I reached a clearing where the trees thinned to reveal a small marsh. The hum was stronger here, vibrating through the ground. I knelt and pressed my palm into the damp moss. It trembled faintly beneath my skin. That's when I realized the sound wasn't coming from the air at all. It was coming from below. I crouched there for a long while, my hand flat against the spongy moss, feeling that faint throb beneath the soil. It wasn't random. It had rhythm, almost a pulse, steady and deliberate, like the breath of something sleeping. Every few seconds, it deepened, a low grinding rumble that you could feel more than hear. My first thought was water, a buried spring or some subterranean river carving its way through stone, but this felt different. It had edges, machinery in the earth. Curiosity pulled harder than common sense. I began tracing the sound, circling the marsh until I found a spot where the vibration was strongest. There, the ground was dry and covered in pine needles. Beneath them, I found an odd patch of metal, no bigger than a dinner plate, flat and rusted into the dirt. I scraped at it with a stick, then my knife, until the dull gleam showed through. When I tapped it, the hum jumped, as if in response. The noise grew sharper, angrier, before settling back to its steady thrum. Something about that reaction unsettled me. I backed away and sat on a fallen log, listening. My heart beat in time with the rhythm below. The forest was utterly still. No birds, no wind, just the mechanical breathing of the ground. I ate lunch there, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. My sandwich tasted of metal and damp air. The hum got under your skin after a while. It wasn't just sound, it was presence. You could feel it in your teeth, your bones, the soles of your boots. I thought of old military bunkers, mining operations, abandoned pipelines, things men build and forget. Stillwater Ridge was supposed to be protected land, though, miles from any development. By mid-afternoon, clouds began to gather, dimming the forest into an early dusk. I decided to hike higher, up a rocky slope, where I might see farther, maybe spot a road or a structure. The higher I climbed, the louder the sound grew, until it wasn't a hum anymore, but a living growl echoing through the stones. At one point it became so strong, the loose pebbles around my boots quivered like something beneath them was stirring. I reached a ledge that overlooked the valley. From there, I could see nothing man-made. No towers, no lights, just an endless sweep of forest, fading into mist. Yet the air itself seemed to shimmer with that vibration, as though invisible machinery was churning somewhere out of sight. I stood there until the first drops of rain began to fall, cold and fat, tapping against my pack like impatient fingers. Whatever that sound was, it wasn't distant. It was everywhere. And the longer I listened, the more I began to suspect that it wasn't something built or operated at all. It was something alive. The rain came harder as I made my way back, down from the ridge, each drop a sharp tap against my hood. The ground had begun to pulse beneath the storm, the hum now blending with the drumming rain until I couldn't tell one from the other. I told myself it was just thunder echoing strangely off the hills, but thunder doesn't come in perfect, mechanical intervals. By the time I reached my camp, dusk had turned to a murky grey. The lake was still, the surface trembling with raindrops, and the reflection of my small tent wavered like a ghost. I should have packed up then, just left, driven home, called it an odd story to tell, but I couldn't. The noise had wrapped itself around me. I needed to understand it. I boiled water for coffee, mostly for warmth, and sat on a flat stone by the fire, pit, staring at the dark tree line. The sound was stronger now, no longer distant. It pulsed through the earth beneath me, up through the stone, into my bones. When the fire hissed and spat, I could hear it answering, like the forest was breathing along with me. At one point, I thought I saw movement in the trees, just a shadow slipping between the trunks, low and deliberate. I froze, straining to hear past the rain. For a moment, the hum seemed to stop, replaced by a faint ticking, like gears winding down. Then it started again, louder than ever, as if mocking my attention. I barely slept. Every time I started to drift off, the noise shifted tone, deep 1 minute, high and whining the next, like metal under tension. I woke once to find my lantern trembling slightly, the flame flickering as though something had brushed against the tent. There was no wind, just that steady, thrumming heart beneath me. When dawn came, the rain had stopped, but mist clung to the forest like breath on glass. I packed my things half-heartedly and pushed off in the canoe, hoping that distance would weaken the sound. It didn't. The lake carried it better than the ground. It rippled across the surface like invisible waves. Even the paddle strikes made it echo back, distorted, as though the water itself had learned to hum. Midway across the lake, I stopped paddling and just listened. The forest was silent except for that low vibration. Then, from somewhere beneath the canoe, I heard it. One sharp metallic clank, like a door closing deep below the surface. The water shuddered. That was the first moment I truly felt fear. I paddled hard for the far shore, every muscle tight with a kind of primitive panic. The mist made distance meaningless. Trees appeared and vanished like ghosts, and the sound seemed to move with me, no longer coming from one direction but from within the lake itself. When my canoe scraped against gravel, I leapt out before it even stopped, boots sinking into the cold mud. I stood there, chest heaving, staring back at the still water. Nothing. No ripples. No movement. Only the faint metallic whisper beneath the surface. I didn't even bother unpacking. I slung my wet pack over my shoulder and headed inland, deeper into the forest, just to get away from the lake's strange vibration. The further I walked, the more I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Some trick of water and weather, maybe an underground spring echoing off bedrock. But after an hour, the hum returned. Faint at first, then steady, matching my heartbeat again. The trail I found was old, just 2 faint ruts through moss and pine needles, almost erased by time. I followed it downhill into a narrow valley where the trees grew close together, their roots clutching grey stones. The noise was louder here, like a hidden generator humming behind the world. Then I saw it. At the base of a rocky slope was a concrete structure, half buried, covered in vines and rot. It looked like a bunker, maybe left over from some forgotten Cold War project. A rusted steel door sat crooked in its frame. The hum poured from behind it, steady and patient, like something had been waiting for me all along. I should have turned back. But curiosity, that old disease of mine, drove me forward. I touched the door. It was warm, not hot. but alive with vibration. The hinges were fused by rust, yet I could feel movement beyond it, subtle shifts of pressure, like pistons turning far below. I stepped back and circled the bunker, finding a small vent half hidden by roots. When I crouched near it, the sound nearly doubled in volume, and beneath the mechanical rhythm was something new, something that almost sounded like voices, not words exactly. Just a rise and fall, too patterned to be random, too human to ignore. I pressed my ear to the vent, rainwater trickling down my cheek, and for a fleeting second I could swear I heard laughter, thin, distorted, echoing through metal. That broke me. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to leave. The sound seemed to follow as I ran, vibrating through my bones, mocking my retreat. When I finally reached the ridge again, gasping for breath, the forest was utterly still. No hum, no echo, just wind through the pines, soft and natural at last. I almost wept from relief. But then, from deep below, the earth exhaled, and the hum began again. I didn't remember packing. I didn't remember breaking camp or how long I'd been walking. I only remember that the sound wouldn't stop. It pulsed beneath every step, faint but steady, like a warning buried in the roots of the world. I followed the ridge down to the dirt road where I'd left my truck, the forest gradually thinning until the first trace of human noise, tyres on asphalt, the whisper of a far-off engine, met that unnatural hum and tangled with it. For a moment I couldn't tell them apart. When I turned the ignition, the vibration of the motor made my stomach twist. It sounded too similar, like I was waking something that didn't want rest. I drove anyway, faster than I should have on that narrow road, until the wilderness began to give way to farms and telephone poles. The hum grew fainter. By the time I reached the highway, it was gone, or maybe just drowned beneath the noise of the world. For weeks after, I tried to convince myself it had been exhaustion, imagination, or the weird acoustics of remote land. But at night, lying awake in my small apartment, I'd swear I heard it again. Through the walls, through the floor, rising from somewhere far below the city. A faint, rhythmic grind that no one else seemed to notice. I moved my bed once, then twice, trying to escape it, but it always returned, steady as a heartbeat. Eventually, I began researching. Old maps, government records, geology reports, anything that might explain what I'd found at Stillwater Ridge. There were mentions of mining surveys in the 1940s, a few notes about deep-bore acoustic readings, CO, and then nothing. No record of construction, no facility ever registered. It was as if that concrete bunker had never existed. Months later, I went back. I told myself it was to prove it had been real, but part of me wanted to hear it again. The forest looked the same, quiet and green, the lake calm as glass. Yet, when I reached the place where the bunker should have been, there was only earth. No concrete, no vent, not even disturbed soil. Just moss and trees, and the faintest trace of vibration when I pressed my hand to the ground. That night I camped by the lake once more, listening to the gentle lap of water and the sigh of wind through pine needles. It was peaceful. Almost. Then, just before dawn, the surface of the lake rippled, though the air was still. A faint metallic tone drifted through the mist, long and low, like the earth remembering its own secret. I sat there until sunrise, watching the light touch the water. Silence, I realised, isn't something you find anymore. It's something the world used to have. Now, even out here, there's always a hum beneath it all, a reminder that we've woken something that never truly sleeps.